you and your work. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Oh, thank you, Sophia.
So I want to start by asking you what attracted you to this story. It's such an interesting one, and I think obviously it stands out. But what was it about it for you that made you want to?
I took it for a really weird reason, actually. It's just one of those things where it was where I just happened to be at that precise moment. The project and the way it was being done and the character kind of spoke to me because I was close to wrapping Midnight Mass, and Mike had sent me the script for this, as did Rose and my manager. Marley managed to get a few people to get it to me, but I wasn't interested in reading it because I was just busy. Anyway, when I did finally sit down with the material, I just kind of really liked the premise, and I was working on Sheriff Hassan at the time, and that was a very tough role for me. It's a very stoic, controlled character where, for 6 months I had to keep my emotions in check because that was the character who was bubbling under the surface, and obviously I was using an American accent. So there was a lot of rigidity to the role, and rightfully so. It was the right choice. With Next Exit, Teddy looked free flowing. I asked Marley if I could, when we took a meeting about it, use my own accent, and so I could improv and be quick on my feet. And so it was a real exercise in I just wanted to do the opposite of Hassan. So I wanted to just almost not prepare in a lot of ways and be in the moment and riff of Katie, and yeah, and that's kind of one of the big reasons why I was attracted to the project, was the opportunity.
And I really like that you said you sort of gotten to do improv a little bit. Can you talk about that? Were there any like moments that you were really excited when you saw the final version of it that you added something into it?
I mean, there's sprinkles. I mean, I'd have to look back at the script, but there was always something natural that would come out of the scenes, or we would change a button, how we would end it, or there was also moments that we were just riffing, with the mics were still hot, and that made it in. I think there's a part where I was explaining, my Siri has the Indian voice, and that wasn't in the movie. That wasn't even in character. I was just telling Katie that, and then it just popped up in the movie. I improv one of the last lines of the film, I think. I was worried about that one. I thought it might have been a little bit too it was a bit too much, but it made it. And I think it was when Teddy gets to go in the driver's seat and he says, do you want to die twice, was just an improv thing I said, and I thought it was a bit much, considering the journey they'd just been on, but it made it. So that was a nice little moment in the theater when I realized that had happened.
Yeah. I feel like that's such great like freedom as an actor as well, because you're devoting yourself to this character and getting to add your own touches must be so
sure fun. Yeah, it definitely, with a road trip movie, would it there needs to be a little fluidity to it, because that's what, it's two people, regardless of where they are in their relationship to one another. It's two people trapped in a car, and I'm glad there was room to put imperfections in the dialogue and make it feel like two real people.
Yeah. And speaking of the road trip, I think it's such an interesting mix between that and the supernatural genre. Can you speak about that, what it was like to explore that as an actor? Obviously, you're fantastic when it comes to like horror and psychological thrillers and all of that, but what was it like doing all of that?
The road trip element was unlike anything I'd done in a while. I have had the fortune, I guess, of I spent, a decade auditioning, to no real avail, and then my first big job was iZombie, and that was 5 years on a fairly big show, and straight out of that was Blind Manor, straight out of that was Midnight Mass. So these are all quite big I don't want to say the word, I was about to say corporate, but you know what I mean. They're industry, you know, and with big budgets, and so it was really interesting to kind of get uncomfortable and go back to kind of almost how I felt when I was doing like supporting directors coming straight out of film school, when I was just looking for a role for free, just to kind of, you know, sink my teeth into acting and experiment. And being on the road, we were staying in motels, and I opted for almost no makeup and hair, and I allowed my beard to grow while we were filming. And I think the only thing I asked Marley for was different t-shirts, but he kept the same sweats and he keeps the same thing. So I kept, like, it was very kind of stripped down to what I was used to, and more and kind of back to basics. So the only thing I ever had to worry about in the morning was just what we were doing in the scene, rather than an hour in makeup and all of this like mucking around, which has been which is, you know, it happens with the kind of bigger stuff. Again, yeah, so like going back to the original thing, it was all of these little elements that kind of really attracted me to Next Exit. Aside from it being, I would never have even entertained being in it if I didn't like the script and I didn't like the story and I didn't jive with Marley. But there was just these really wonderful opportunities to kind of go back to like a two-hand, you know, I've been part of these large ensembles. So it was nice to just have one scene partner for about a month and focus on each other.
I am a firm believer that with entertainment, there's always something you could take away from the character or the story. And I'm curious for you, was there anything you personally took away from either, or anything that you'll take with you acting wise that you learned on the project?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm my approach in terms of like technique, I realized off this job that it varies from project to project, and I don't want to get stuck into the same approach for every character and project, because I take the romance out of acting, to be honest, because I think it's like the easiest bullshit thing in the world, and I can't believe everyone's paying me to do this. But so I do take the romance out of it, and I do look at actors like plumbers or you know, like they're sole tradesmen, and you know, someone comes along and they ask you to design their bathroom, or they need retiling, or they need you to install a new sink, and a worker doesn't use the exact same tools every project. Like, you're supposed to have an arsenal, you're supposed to have a tool bag, and each job requires a different set of skills. And my process for iZombie was very different to my process for Midnight Mass, for instance, which leaned, I'd say, more so into the cliche method nonsense that has got such a bad rap recently, unfortunately. But and then on this one, I almost kind of threw away a lot of my preparation and tried to be as underprepared and in the moment, and not making choices the night before or the week before, and kind of feeling out where we were and what Katie was doing and how I can support that. And, you know, I think a lot of us prepare. It gives us confidence and it helps us feel less insecure when we show up on the day and all of a sudden the camera's on you. So I spent a month kind of riding that, like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing today, I'm going to figure it out, and, you know, try and do this organically. And it really worked for this movie. It wouldn't work on Midnight Mass. I'd have got my ass kicked if I had done that on Mass. So it was really nice to do that. Yeah. So I learned to kind of, as I'm getting a bit older and more settled in my career, and I've learned, you know, you don't always have to bring the same tools to every job.
I have to wrap, but it was really such a pleasure. Thank
Lovely
you
to speak
so
to
much.
you, Sophia. Thank you.
Lovely to speak to you. Congrats on everything.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me. The hard knock life, comics, movies, and TV. Yeah, pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this.